Hi everyone, I'm Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yakker. I welcome you to join me in viewing part two of my interview with Mike Huberty, founder of American Ghost Walks. Have participants in any of your ghost walks had a paranormal experience while on it? If so, what was it and how did they react to that experience?
We have people that sometimes feel like they get touched or things like that. That happened to me in Scotland, the Black Vault in the Greyfriars for the City of the Dead in Edinburgh tour, where I was in the back of the Black Vault. My wife was next to me and they were telling some story and I'm like, oh, and I feel her arm around me like she's getting a little scared. I'm like, that's okay, honey. And then I realized she's on a different side of me. So like, and there was no one next to me that put their arm around me. We've had experiences like that where people feel they touched or grabbed or things like that on our tours. And sometimes people will take pictures and see figures in a window when there's nobody there. Nothing like a full body apparition jumps out at them. I would say that an interesting thing happened when we were designing one of our tours in the town of Lake Geneva. And Lake Geneva is a small tourist town in between Chicago and Milwaukee. So it's right on the Wisconsin-Illinois border. Lake Geneva was kind of built up by these very rich Chicago families after the Great Fire of Chicago happened in 1871. And some of their families would then build these beautiful cabins on the lake. I shouldn't say cabins. These were mansions on the lake built by Maytag and Woolworth, these monsters companies. And their families would have their vacation homes in Lake Geneva. And so today it's still a great vacation place. Cool history, beautiful downtown, great people. We want to do a ghost tour there. And it's about 15 minutes from where I grew up. It's also where Dungeons and Dragons was invented in Lake Geneva. We're setting up the tour and I'm walking with the guides and we're actually walking the route together. And this is our first walk together and we're going through and I'm kind of reading them the stories I wrote. Okay, so we stop here, we tell this story, read the script. And I'm like, okay, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. And finishing up the design of it before launching like a month later. And we get to a place where one of the guides used to work and she didn't have any particular ghost stories about it. She did find some old logbooks in the basement that looked like they were gambling related. And there was like a tunnel that would have led to the lake. It's the perfect kind of thing where somebody could have ran booze during Prohibition from on the lake and they get to the tunnel because this is only a couple blocks from the lake. They load up, sneak through the tunnel, then get into the speakeasy kind of thing. And this is a historic block. And so she's like, let's go in the store and see if they've got any new stories. It was a different kind of store from when she used to work there, but she's like, why don't we just go in and check it out? I'm like, hey, that's a good idea. We walk in, there was nobody in there. So it's like we weren't bothering them or anything. And we start talking to the owner and just like, hey, we're working on this haunted history tour of Lake Geneva. One of our guides, she used to work here. And she said, there's some cool history in the basement and we kind of would like to check it out and see if you had any kind of experiences yourself. She goes, wow, I tell you the truth, I'm Catholic. I don't believe in ghosts. I'm like, okay, nope, no problem. I didn't say anything like, what about the Holy Ghost? I wouldn't set her up like that. But I just said, sure. You guys can come check out the basement. No problem. Like, great. We go in there. It's a spooky late 19th century, early 20th century built basement. She's like, oh, here's where I found what I think are the gambling books and stuff. And we're just kind of looking around. And so it's me, the woman who owns the place, and the two guides. One of the guides used to work there. And the other guy had mentioned, he's like, well, sometimes I sense things or I'm sensitive to the other side and I get messages sometimes. I'm like, okay, that sounds fine. But I didn't think to anything of it. And so we're all hanging out in this basement. I'm walking through and it's fairly normal, old, kind of spooky, interesting. And I'm looking around to see okay, there's where the old tunnel was and it's filled in now. And that's a cool little historical fact we can stick in the script. And I'm trying to make a mental note of everything so I can write it down and describe it when we do the tour. As we get towards the far corner of the room, there's a little pantry. As we get near the pantry, I see the owner, the woman. She starts tearing up and she goes, I don't believe in ghosts except, and then she starts crying. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, is she all right? You're not used to strangers showing you emotion, right? You're like, okay. And then the guide that has had some sensitive psychic experience, she's like, well, it's the little girl in the corner. I see her too. She's like, yes, I see her sometimes. And then they proceed. She's like, well, she went through some stuff, but she's all right now kind of thing. And then the guide proceeds to hug the woman. They're both kind of emotional And I'm sitting there like, okay, I just saw the coroner. But this woman who just told us she didn't believe in ghosts breaks down when we get to this area of the basement where she's seen the ghost of a little girl. And obviously it affected her emotionally, not just like, oh, I saw a ghost, but she feels some kind of great sadness from the girl. And then our guide picked up on that. And then they had an emotional moment where she's like, I see it. I understand it. It's going to be okay. And then you hear ding, 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 ding. Like, so somebody walked in the front door of the shop. And then it was like, steadies herself, goes back up the stairs. And, it's like, hi, welcome to the store. Can I help you kind of thing. And I'm just sitting there. Everybody's just sitting there downstairs. Did we just have a paranormal experience? Like, what happened here? Like, who saw that? What's going on? But then I was on a schedule. Like, well, okay, I'm going to write this down. And then we got to get to the rest of the, we still got to get to the rest of the script. And I still got an hour drive home. But it was one of those kinds of things where if you're in the middle of designing a haunted history tour, to have just a little paranormal experience between two people who didn't know each other at all, who experienced the same kind of thing in a place that's going to be on the tour, to me, that's the exciting kind of stuff that, even though it's not terribly dramatic, not like a story of a murder or a true crime or anything like that, even though it's not terribly dramatic, it's multiple people having a similar experience for no other reason than they're together in that same place. And to me, that's the uncanny stuff that I want to build tours off of. And that's the uncanny stuff that makes me really fascinated with the world of the supernatural and the paranormal, because I can't explain it, because it's a real mystery. How do people have this kind of non-physical communication? And what were they experience from the third party, the ghost or the spirit or the whatever? Like, how were they both able to perceive her and then me and our other guy weren't? And those are the kind of things that make me want to wake up in the morning and go call stores and restaurants and hotels and go to these places and explore these stories and then share them with tourists and people who might be interested in those same kind of things that I am.
I find that fascinating. And what you just said, Mike, leads me to want to ask you the following question. Did you ever have mediums on your tours? And if you did, were they able to communicate with any of the ghosts they encounter?
We have had that in a couple of different cities. We've done it where we've brought along a medium. I have not been there for those particular tours, so I can't tell you what kind of communication they had. But we did a Halloween tour this year in Lake Geneva with a medium who came along, and he would hear he would give his impressions, hear the ghost story, and I know that people thought that was really fun. And so we'll probably be doing that more in different areas as we kind of we find mediums or sensitives that we like. There's a lot of times it's got to be, well, can we verify what they said? Or there's a medium out of so the guy that came along in Lake Geneva, his name is Jay Hill. He's a real nice guy. But I'm not the kind of guy that has seen a lot of psychics or tarot readers or anything like that. My sister, on the other hand, loves that, has gone to a lot of different psychics and readers and everything. And she, I remember, vacation in New Orleans, they turn around like, where'd she go? Oh, she's just she'll be here in 10 minutes. She'll just take 10 minutes. But when when she has told me that somebody told her something that there's no possible way they could have known, out of all the psychics and stuff like that she has visited, and there was somebody, our friend MJ in the UK, Sage Paranormals. And I remember what she said. She's like, this person told me something that no one else knew. And I'm like, well, what was it? And she's like, well, I can't tell you, or I won't tell you. So some kind of secret that she wouldn't even tell her brother. But that's the kind of thing where you're like, okay, now that's the kind of person I want to have on a paranormal tour with us, because we can vouch for him. That I think that's, to me, that's the kind of fascinating stuff. Like, okay, so let's just say you're completely skeptical and you think that someone could do, like, well, how did they predict it? If I'm completely skeptical, the mystery is I still want to know how they got that information out of me, or, how they learned that, or what they did. And so all those things put together, I'm fascinated with people who are sensitive, because I'm about as sensitive as a brick.
Ghost tours have always been on the to-do list of most visitors to a city. And in recent years, they have become more popular than ever. That is something I'm sure you're happy about. To what do you attribute the increased popularity of ghost tours?
One, I think advertising has gotten better. Number one, social media has helped with advertising being affordable. So instead of maybe 20 years ago or 25 years ago, you would have to take out a television ad that might be expensive, or a newspaper ad that might be really expensive. And then you're going for a small sliver of people who are probably interested. Are you putting out do you pay $5,000 for an ad that might only generate $2,000 worth of business? Meanwhile, social media lets you spend $500 on that ad, then gives you $2,000 worth of business. So I think number one, it's the granularity of advertising has enabled more niche markets markets to be successful, because you can reach people directly who are interested in the kinds of things that you are interested in. Number two, I think also that the fact that the Travel Channel became the Ghost Channel, like how much of the Travel Channel's original programming has to do with paranormal and supernatural. You're getting an advertisement for ghost hunting and dark tourism and all these things all the time by these different ghost hunting shows. So I think the fact that the proliferation of those has also made regular people more interested in learning about the haunted sites of a city. So I think that really has affected how it's not just during Halloween anymore. They have, paranormal shows on all the time. When I was a kid, you'd be really excited when there would be some kind of ghost story on That's Incredible or Real People or something like that. Or I remember being excited when Arthur C. Clarke's World of Strange Powers was being shown on the local public television station. And then I would, make sure to videotape them all because I couldn't stay up that late, but I would program the VCR. So at 11, you'd have that. And that was a very special thing because those shows weren't on all the time. And so you really had to seek everything out if you were interested in it. And today you can go on YouTube, see a million different kind of shows. You turn on the Travel Channel, Discovery Plus, or now on HBO Max. You log in, it's like new season of Ghost Adventures, without even like going directly to my preferences or whatever. So I do think that all of those things have combined to helping companies like mine find their audience through social media and paid advertising and online advertising, number one. And then number two, there's a bigger group of people who are interested in it because they're exposed to, ghost stories on these reality, whatever people think about these paranormal reality TV shows. I understand some of them are ridiculous. However, if they serve to get people interested in, haunted history and history, well, that can't be that bad of a thing.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to learn about the various tours now offered by American Ghost Walks and find out how they can go about booking one, how can they do that?
It's as easy as going to AmericanGhostWalks.com. And we also have we have an email list where we do like a haunted story every week. If you're just even interested in the paranormal, we have a new haunted story. It's usually from one of the locations that we visit on our ghost tours that we send to people every week. And it also has cool merchandise, and it's got links to when there's an interesting podcast that's out there or interesting TV show, we put them all in there as well and let everybody know about it. So at AmericanGhostWalks.com is the easiest way you can book a tour or just kind of see what we're up to.
Mike, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. I wish you continued success with all your endeavors.
I appreciate that, Stan. You as well.
Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. So that you don't miss any upcoming shows, be sure to subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, just press the subscribe button on your screen.